Welcome to Sara Gonzales Unfiltered, back from the tundra here in Dallas, Texas. A tundra that we're going to be driving in later to go to a game that I hope I get a chance to talk about. And I want to ask, before I bring on my guest, I want to ask you guys, please let me know in the comments if you live in a southern state or just a state that does not get snow very often. Do your children get just like exceptionally crazy when this happens? Because mine are like wild animals right now. And I think it's the cold and the snow and the being like inside, but then they're going outside and they're playing, but then they come back inside and they're still crazy. So I'm just wondering if it could just be that I do have feral children, but I'm just wondering if anyone else has any different or same experience as we do. So we'll try to get this show done without any feral children coming in. So I want to welcome to the show Eric July, Blaze TV contributor, and of course, founder of Ripaverse Comics to the show. Welcome, Eric. How are you holding up in this snow?
I'm holding up well. I'm obviously pretty far north of Dallas, so we got most of the snow because I'm basically in Oklahoma. And yeah, it was coming down pretty good.
Yeah, it is fun. I mean, I know the Northerners make fun of us because here in Texas, we don't know what to do with it. But also, to be fair, like we don't have it enough that we would have any equipment to take care. I mean, as far as us personally, like I don't have snow tires or, proper shoes that will take up all of the wetness that, your feet get from being out there. So anyway, I'm sure they're laughing at us, but we're tolerating it. So Eric, I don't know if you saw, we've gone through all of the lawfare with President Donald Trump, who takes office. He takes the oath in 10 days. Okay. And he's gone through all of this lawfare throughout the years and all of these different cases, and they all end up fizzling out into nothing because we all know that they were bogus in the first place. And just today, after Donald Trump tried to appeal with the New York Supreme Court, or the New York Appeals Court, I should say, he tried to throw a Hail Mary to the Supreme Court of the United States, which denied him in this hush money trial, they call it, with, of course, the payment that was made to Stormy Daniels. The whole thing was, again, as a reminder, Eric, because I feel like our audience may need a flow chart because there are so many bogus charges that were against Donald Trump. This was, of course, where they took that payment, the hush money payment that they called it, and they tried to say, well, he didn't categorize it correctly in his ledger, and therefore that is falsifying business records. And by the way, we're going to amp it up to a felony by doing a little bit more mental gymnastics, because even that would not be a felony, but we need him to be a convicted felon. We really need that so that he doesn't win this election. Well, we see how that turned out. But with this particular one, we have the Supreme Court that Donald Trump tried to get them to come in at the last second. Amy Coney Barrett sided with the Democrats in not stepping in and not allowing this to happen because of the prior case on presidential immunity. But after all of that was said and done, Judge Juan Merchan over in New York was like, I am going to sentence you. You think that this is going to be dismissed. No, not so fast. I need something out of this. We need something. So you need to come remotely and be sentenced today. So that happened. And he, instead of saying, fine, no harm, no foul, I realize how all this played out and we're just going to wash our hands of it. He said, all right, fine. You're not going to serve time. You're not going to pay any fines. You're not really going to have anything except you are still going to be a convicted felon. And he did that by giving him an unconditional discharge. And I want to play Donald Trump's comments, Eric. And I realize this is a couple minutes long, but I think that it's really important to listen to him and his response right after the moment where he learned that they were like, we're going to make sure that you are branded. Your legacy is tarnished because we can always say that you are a convicted felon. So let's play some of Donald Trump's remarks after they gave him, he handed down that sentencing to Trump. Let's listen to that. And then Eric, we'll come back and I want to hear your thoughts.
This has been a very terrible experience. I think it's been a tremendous setback for New York and the New York court system. This is a case that Alvin Bragg did not want to bring. He thought it was, from what I read and from what I hear, inappropriately handled before he got there. A gentleman from a law firm came in and acted as a district attorney, and that gentleman, from what I heard, was a criminal or almost criminal in what he did. It was very inappropriate. It was somebody involved with my political opponent. It's been a political witch hunt. It was done to damage my reputation so that I'd lose the election, and obviously that didn't work. And the people of our country got to see this firsthand because they watched the case in your courtroom. They got to see this firsthand, and then they voted, and I won and got the largest number of votes by far of any Republican candidate in history, and won, as you know, all 7 swing states, won conclusively all 7 swing states, and won the popular vote by millions and millions of votes. And they've been watching your trial. So they understood it. It was under a gag order where I couldn't talk about aspects of the case that are very important. I guess I'm still under, so probably I won't do it now. I assume I'm still under a gag order. But the fact is that I'm totally innocent. I did nothing wrong. They talk about business records, and the business records were extremely accurately counted. I had nothing to do with them. That was done by an accountant or a bookkeeper who I think gave very credible testimony and was corroborated by everybody that was asked. With all that's happening in our country today, with a city that's burning to the ground, one of our largest, most important cities burning to the ground, with wars that are uncontrollably going on, with all of the problems of inflation and attacks on countries and all of the horrible things that are going on, I got indicted over calling a legal expense a legal expense. It was called a legal expense. I just want to say I think it's an embarrassment to New York, and New York has a lot of problems, but this is a great embarrassment. I believe that this and other cases that were brought, as you know, the DOJ is very much involved in this case. It's because that's the political opponent they're talking about. The DOJ is very involved. You have a gentleman sitting right there from the DOJ who was from the DOJ's office. He was also involved with the New York State Attorney General's case. And he went from there to here. He went around and did what he had to do. He got them to move on me. But in the meantime, I won the election in a massive landslide. And the people of this country understand what's gone on. This has been a weaponization of government. They call it lawfare. Never happened to any extent like this, but never happened in our country before. And I'd just like to exclaim that I was treated very, very unfairly. And I thank you very much.
And still at the end, and thank you very much. You know, it's like, okay, he's still going to be the polite class act that we see that he is in circumstances such as these. And yet he brings up such great points, Eric. It's like, guys, the American people watched this play out. They all watched this play out. And if I really was guilty of all of these things, they would not have just reelected me with, you know, unprecedented numbers for a Republican. And on top of that, just for the audience to just as a reminder, he mentions the Biden DOJ being involved in this case. He was, of course, referencing Matthew Colangelo, who was serving as a senior official in the DOJ under Joe Biden and resigned voluntarily and then walked on over to, of course, Alvin Bragg's office over there in Manhattan to lead the prosecution against Donald Trump. Like, that is bonkers crazy how dirty that is. And I'm glad that he mentioned it. But I mean, just imagine the human part of him, Eric. It's like, this is a father. This is a grandfather. He has children. He has grandchildren who are now going to have to listen to all of these people talk about how their dad, who they know did nothing wrong, is a convicted felon. And it just makes me so mad for him.
Well, that was the goal. I mean, I don't even think they really had any intention on, well, let me take that back. If they could have, they would have put him in prison, but especially understanding how much he was rising in those polls during the time, that was just not something that they were going to be able to do. And that would have equaled a lot of turmoil in the streets had they had done something like that. But ultimately, it was about trying to place this sort of like moniker on him that had this negative connotation. Now, again, they're striking now because this is all that they have left. If they could have done it before, they would have, because it was all about trying to damage his reputation and obviously win the election. And that backfired. It backfired tremendously, right? Some would make the argument because they saw the way that it played out, it might have worked to his advantage, right? So they still, I guess, can do that victory lap. And they can tell everybody that, well, this man is a convicted felon, which is what they intended to do. And maybe there is a normie or two that will hear that and think negatively of him because of it. But anybody that was paying attention, and I think this is going to be very important for everybody that has the platforms like myself, like you, obviously, Sarah, and everybody else, because, you know, as history goes, as we get further and further removed from this, they are going to go back and try to label him as such. And those of us that were obviously alive and healthy and talking about this is going to be very important that they knock a lot of this stuff down and remind folks that it didn't go down the way that they thought that it went down, and just simply labeling someone as a convicted felon. There's a lot more to the story. But ultimately, this whole charade really galvanized his troops. It worked to his advantage. They're still sour at it, but it is, I think, awesome in a sense that people are getting to kind of see this play out in the court system that happens to everyday people all the time. I believe when we were on the show, Sarah, when this was going down, and we talked about how just with our justice system and how people are, be it railroaded or, kind of getting the short end of the stick, that obviously don't have the means to sort of fight against it. If it can happen to Trump, it could happen to anybody. I think there does need to be a massive shakeup with the justice system, be it criminal or civil. The fact that you can just basically sue anybody for just about anything. It's all jacked up. It's a very litigious country that we have here in America. So if it can happen to him, it already has been happening to everybody else. And maybe that is sort of the wake up call.
Yeah, I mean, it is a great reminder that, you have these activists, way too many activists who are, basically doing that from the bench. They're acting as these little activists from the bench, and they're not being unbiased in the way that the justice system was supposed to be designed. We see that with these pro-life protesters that are being thrown in prison. We see it with the January 6ers who, they're trying to, again, go through these mental gymnastics to amp up a charge to a felony somehow so that they can try to put them in prison. I mean, it's insane how disgusting the rot gets. And it will be, again, 10 days, guys, until we see what Donald Trump is going to do with all of this. I really hope he burns it to the freaking ground. But I want to play, you mentioned, Eric, this was obviously the goal the whole time. Now, the goal was to do it so that he would lose the election. They saw how that played out, but they're like, we've got to get one more just jab at him. And that was the only reason why they wanted to, of course, make sure that he had that convicted felon tag. Well, case in point to what you're saying, MSNBC, they were, very excited, the salivating, probably foaming, chomping at the bit to be able to, oh my God, Donald Trump is a convicted felon. And they actually are really worried that Donald Trump might be able to reverse the conviction on appeal. Check this out.
Did the government accidentally, initially make a mistake that is, that might, on appeal, lead to a reversal of the conviction? I think that's a real possibility. I don't think it's definitive. I don't know that that's what will happen. But if your question is, does Mr. Trump have something that he can credibly argue on appeal to seek reversal? The answer is yes.
They're like, but what if he can reverse it, and then we can't call him a convicted felon anymore? I mean, these are the conversations that mainstream media are having today, Eric.
Yeah, that sounds about right. That they would be upset at all of that because, again, they saw it go down the way that it did. And I think anybody that's rational, I don't think it really matters where you're at on the political spectrum. Something stunk about this whole deal. The whole deal stunk to high L. And even if you aren't a fan of Donald Trump, you can at least see sort of how politically advantageous it was for them to do that. And then we talk about all the activists that are, unfortunately, in these positions, and they were just trying to throw everything that they could at him and hoping that it stick, or rather stuck. Now we're going to move forward to, he's obviously going to be inaugurated soon, and then we'll see what happens after that. But absolutely, there is a chance because it's bogus. largely, right? Of course, so there's a chance. Not to say that it happens, and he did preface it by saying that it's not like a slam dunk, but it could happen, and it's likely, and then they will be stripped of that, and that would just be seen as another victory for Trump. Any event that does happen, because now you've been stripped away from everything. You went on this witch hunt. You carried this on for as long as you absolutely could. You wanted to derail the election. That didn't work. And but you got your little conviction that you wanted. But if that ends up getting reversed in any sort of capacity, well, you screw it up yet again. I think that's yet another moment that's just going to galvanize the troops yet again.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, let's go ahead and take a quick break. And then when we come back on that note, 10 freaking days. Let's go. I can't wait. I want to talk about what Donald Trump plans to do on day one, right after he gets sworn in 10 days from now. First, I want to thank our sponsor, Patriot Mobile. So Patriot Mobile is, first of all, I love their founders. I love Glenn's story. I love Jenny's story. They are like some of the most amazing patriots you will ever meet in your life. But they're making it really simple for you because you can either go to Big Mobile, where they're going to take a portion of what you're paying every month in your bill, and they're going to turn around and they're going to fund left-leaning causes. Or you can go check out Patriot Mobile, who is participating in the parallel economy by giving you another option and saying, hey, maybe you should give your money every month for your cell phone to a company that doesn't hate you, and not only doesn't hate you, but also wants to support the causes that you actually believe in, like freedom of speech, like, closing the border, like all of these things that we are fighting for. You're spending time and energy fighting for it. Patriot Mobile is on the front lines, putting their money where their mouths are and fighting that fight for you. So go check them out. Odds are they're going to save you money anyway. They've got the same nationwide coverage that you guys are already accustomed to. So you can keep your number, you can keep your phone, or you can upgrade and change your number. You can do it however you like over at Patriot Mobile. I'm just telling you, go check them out. I'm telling you, they're probably going to save you money. And Glenn Story himself told me they will buy you out of your contract. So there's no reason not to go check them out. It's patriotmobile.com/Sarah. If you use promo code Sarah, you will get a free month of service. Don't sleep on this deal. Okay, patriotmobile.com/Sarah. Use promo code Sarah for that free month of service. January 20th is going to be, I think, obviously it's going to be a great day for us, but it's going to be a momentous day if Donald Trump does all of the things that he says he's going to do with his executive orders. Now, Eric, I know that you would join me in just saying, I don't love the use of executive orders, period. Like, I think that they have been largely abused, and I don't think that that's the way that it is supposed to be. However, that is what we're up against, and that is what they have decided to do. I mean, how long do you think it's been? Like a couple decades of this creeping up on us, where now all of a sudden they're just going to go bypass Congress and just sign whatever they want rather than allowing Congress to do their job. So I just want to say, I know you hate that. I was going to say as much as me, probably more than me. Okay. But let's just set that aside. Okay. Let's set that component aside, because they're all doing it. Joe Biden, by executive order, undid a lot of what Donald Trump had put into place. And so here we are on day one, January 20th. What does Donald Trump plan to do by executive order? So he says day one, he is going to, for the border, let's go to the border first. He's going to restore the travel ban. I know that they said it's a Muslim ban. That's not fair. That's super racist and xenophobic. No, it's just saying, hey, there's a list of countries that are producing people who really hate this country and are hell bent on coming to kill as many of us as possible. And they create a lot of terrorism. And we should probably not accept people from those countries. Suspending refugee admissions, stop resettlement, stop the resettlement and keeping terrorists out of the country. Building the border wall, rebuilding the border wall, constructing facilities to hold these illegal immigrants, and re-implementing Title 42. I mean, just those things. Obviously, the border wall is not built on day one, right? We know that. But just to be able to just say, all right, day one, my DHS agents are coming in now, and they're not going to allow these people entry. They're not, they're going to hold them and then they're going to deport them. They're not going to even be allowed to fly in. I mean, I just think day one, they can get a lot. Obviously, there's a lot that needs to be done, and it's going to take years and years and years to root these people out. But it'll be a pretty good start on day one. Am I wrong?
Well, this is a subject matter that I think a lot of people, both on the quote unquote right and left, really, they have a similar position, right? Now, I think the left were late to the party, very late to the party on the subject of immigration. It was that whole kumbaya coexist thing. And then once they started getting dropped off in their cities, like the Chicagos and the New York cities of the world, and they saw just from a resources standpoint how unfair things can get. They kind of pivoted on that. And I think a lot of people ended up supporting Trump, even if they just kind of held their nose doing it because of this specific issue. So it was something that is going, just immigration in general is something that it's like a number one subject for a lot of people. And they are going to be looking to Trump to see what he does. Now, I would make the argument, especially in a state like Texas, I can't speak for the others. I think it shouldn't even take any of that. I think it's more of just, hey, Texas, do what you do. And we'll just not get in your way, which is what we were dealing with and had been dealing with the Biden administration, right? There shouldn't even be any haggling or conversing or any of that. Let Texas hold it down for themselves. Now, I do think the refugee resettlement stuff is something that I've been highlighting actually for years. I don't think a lot of people know about it, just how much money is kind of being funded through this. This refugee resettlement. This is entirely, obviously, subsidized by the government. So you do have, I mean, you could argue that it is a forced integrationist effort, right? Which anybody that is actually anti-government should be against. But that part doesn't get talked about. They look at it like, oh, well, borders are just lines and people cross it and all that. But when you have something like the refugee resettlement program, it's actually the complete opposite. It's the government paying to import people that often are culturally incompatible with how people are living in that geographical area. That's specifically what the refugee resettlement program is. I've been highlighting this for years, but a lot of people don't know it. They just think that, unfortunately, it's often Upper East Coast. There's no disrespect to any of those guys that watch our show here. I'm just saying that a lot of people that aren't impacted by what goes down in the South, or rather in the southern border, you talk about immigration as if it's just this poor family that wants to get a better life. And that's just, yeah, sure, there are people out there that exist, but to pretend like that's just all that happens when it comes to immigration in this country, that is a complete lie. You do have refugee resettlement programs where the government is actively importing this. So I think that I'd argue that that's a libertarian position to just suspend it. So stop subsidizing it is all that I can ask from them.
Yeah, I totally agree. Let me go through a few more of these day one executive orders. So obviously, Donald Trump in his first administration had reversed Obama's policy allowing trans people in the military. And Biden repealed that. But now the conversation is, well, hey, not only did Biden repeal that and, make sure that he reversed any of Donald Trump's progress that he had made, he also started this taxpayer-funded transgender procedures for service members. So if you are a service member, you get to, not only do you get to serve, but you get to say, hey, I want free hormones. I want free surgeries. And taxpayers are paying for that, right? So Donald Trump says that he will end that, as well as ending the radical gender ideology within the military ranks. We have Pete Hegseth, who I understand he hasn't been confirmed yet. But I mean, if he is at the top of that, I think that's going to do a lot. He has had a lot of work specifically on the wokeness of the military and the disastrous consequences that could lead to. But so he expects that he's going to do that day one. Also, end taxpayer-funded abortions for military members, which I didn't even, I had forgotten that was even a thing, Eric, because there's a list that is so long of dumb things that we're paying for, even in the military, that I'm like, oh, I had forgotten that we were doing that too. Pardons for January 6th defendants, banning, males and female sports, and revoking the offshore oil, gas, and drilling ban in these areas that, Biden came in and made worse at the 11th hour. So again, set aside the grossness of executive orders should not be used in this way. It doesn't really matter at this point because this is the way that they have governed and this is the way that they have decided to do it. And if Donald Trump can make this type of progress on this many things on day one, that's a good thing.
We'll see. We'll see what happens. We'll see what he is going to even just be able to do. And you're
going to rain on my parade. Don't rain on my parade, Eric.
Well, no, it's not that. It's just like this. Look, I'm not a fan, and we're both not. To be fair to both of us, the whole we talk about that on the shows that we had been doing over the years. That the whole just executive order willy nilly is something that is a problem, right? Because you fear really the situation that we're moving in now, where they absolutely have to do it because their opposition's doing it, right? So they're trying to one up each other. And I don't know how bad that's going to get. And I can only pray that it doesn't get any worse, where you have this situation where whoever is the president is able to basically do what he wants, as long as he can sort of mask it as an executive order or title it as such. I think there's going to be a lot of conflict there. But more than anything, it's just the subject matter. It's let's talk about what he can do that does fall within his power. Less about what Congress voting on something. We know that oftentimes, unfortunately, we talk about the president as if they just can do everything. That's not how it's supposed to work. But when you're talking about foreign policy, that's what they are tasked with handling, right? So if he's doing something that is going to fall kind of under that umbrella, it's not so bad. This is why I've been talking about dealing with these foreign affairs, and even in some cases within immigration, for them to pretend like that is not under their umbrella, so they act like their hands are so tied when they can't do something or they don't want to do something. Well, it's not up to me, Congress. It was wait a minute, no. That's actually your job. That's actually what you were supposed to be doing. So if he's doing something to try to mitigate, let's say, these disasters, especially dealing with how much money we're sending overseas and some of those war efforts that the United States military is involved in, or the United States military in general, that's something that I can stomach, right? I can stomach. And look, I don't want to bring up, it's not a side note, what's going on out there in the West and California with stuff burning down. You start to see kind of just how retarded, for lack of better terms, some of the policies that we have to try to bring people in and rule with feelings, right? In positions that they have no business being in. How did it become controversial to say that maybe someone who is so mentally distraught to where they think that they can just up and change genders, I don't know if I trust them to be an agent of the state like that as a military man or a serviceman or woman in general. Sure, there may be positions that, let's say, even a woman is better suited to and equipped to do, but you see how ridiculous things get when it does end up hitting a fan, and you really need men, especially strong ones, to get out there and actually get stuff done. All this diversity and inclusivity and the trans stuff and none of that stuff matters. It goes out of the window almost immediately. So it is kind of crazy that we're even having these conversations that is like this radical position to say, I don't know, the government shouldn't be funding these abortions for service folk, and service folk in general, especially in the military, should not be involved in, I don't know, cutting their stuff off. That's not a person that sounds like they got it all upstairs.
Right. Yeah. No, I'm glad that you mentioned the just the pushback that you'll get. They call you, you're just hateful. You're just a hate monger if you say that, maybe trans people shouldn't serve in the military. That's mean, right? It's no. This is totally objective. Okay. I am being completely objective. I'm not caring if I hurt someone's feelings, but it's also not what it's about for me.
Right.
If someone has mental issues. They shouldn't, I don't want them in combat. I don't want them having access to our nation's secrets. I don't want them there, period. On top of that, this is what I love that you mentioned, is that you brought up women as well in that role. This is not like an LGBT hate mongering thing, because if it were, I would stop at that. I also agree with you. I don't think that women should see combat. If you want to have them in some sort of a role where they are doing something else, they're doing desk work, whatever, you can have that argument. But there is no way, if you are looking objectively, that you can say that women would be the same as men in combat. Because if you ask any member of the military who they would prefer to be down by them in the bunker when the stuff hits the fan, who they trust to carry them to safety, to grab them and put them on their shoulder and carry them to safety, it's gonna be a dude. Like it just will. It just is, if they're being honest with themselves. So like this isn't a hateful thing. This is like literally someone who is objective, who is saying, how can we make our military the strongest, most effective military in the entire world? These are things that you would do, period. So I'm glad that you brought that up, Eric, because it's not, if we were just trying to be hateful, we would stop at like if it was about the LGBT crowd, we'd stop there. That's not what it's about. It's literally about strengthening our military, and that's it. So, Eric, you mentioned the terrible, disastrous Democrat policies, and of course watching all of these wildfires in LA just get worse and worse because of those Democrat policies. Let's go ahead and we're going to take a quick break. And then I want to let's talk about that situation that's been going on for 4 days now when we return. So, of course, this has been going on for 4 days now over in LA, these wildfires that have scorched more than 36,000 acres now, 9,000 structures damaged or destroyed, and 10 people killed. And I realize that people are like, well, you can't, policies didn't start the wildfires. No, but policies led to the total devastation when they were not contained, because you don't even have any water coming from the freaking fire hydrants, that like the one job it has is to hold water for the firefighters. So of course that it didn't create the fire, it just made it 10 times worse. So on top of that, you have looters that are now robbing all of these neighborhoods. I guess they're trying to find stuff in the ashes. And this is citizens capturing an arsonist that went through, as if looting wasn't enough. There was a guy that was using a blowtorch to ignite Christmas trees. And I guess he's like, he just really likes fire, I guess. I would encourage him to just go to where the fires already are rather than creating new ones. But so they detained him until police arrived, took him into custody. And apparently several hours ago, Eric, to your point, like this just totally encapsulates your point so great. The alleged arsonist has already been released from custody because police said there was no evidence to charge him.
Yeah, look, you bring up a great point. It's not to say that like specifically like DEI or whatever buzz term you want to use started the fire. That's not an argument that anybody is making. It's classic red herring and deflecting, rather, to pretend that that's the position that people have. But what the argument that people are making is that this has been this like sort of colossal mismanagement, right? To where when it did hit the fan, they were totally unequipped to actually deal with that, right? And I do think that this is kind of the dangers of those policies, right? I just did a video really discussing and going into detail about how, look, I'm obviously a fan of markets, right? I'm a big fan of markets and allowing private citizens to be able to figure these things out. And really, that's kind of what happened here, right? Where even with the internet and stuff going out, you got Elon Musk, his company has to come in and start so people can like broadcast and do whatever that they need to do, putting the SpaceX stuff there. But they entrust, because they are forced to, the government in those areas, right, to deal with these problems, right? You got all these stupid policies, environmental bull crap, and all this stuff that you're supposedly worried about. And then when it's time, like, okay, well, you're the ones that are forced to deal with this situation. So the entire populace is obviously going to look, because they haven't been able to prepare themselves for it, because it's probably illegal for them to do so. They're looking to the government, right? They're looking to Newsom. They're looking to LA. They're looking to wherever they're at to say, hey, man, come fix this problem. And it's like, oops, everything that you got is burned down. And what sucks out of it is these people are going to find out the hard way, number one, how insurance works. You know, they had a lot of West Coast elites sitting here saying that, well, when people get their stuff looted out of, it's no big deal because they got insurance. You're going to find out exactly how that works for sure. And then when it comes to definitely rebuilding anything, you're going to find the just crazy amount of red tape that's levied at you by your government, your state and local government, and even federal in some cases when it comes to actually fixing the problem. So I don't want to say they caused a problem, but when the problem started to come about, they did absolutely nothing really to try to mitigate it, to try to at least slow this thing down. We went such a long period of time with just absolute 0% containment. And that's just telling me that they didn't know what to do. They had no idea what to do in this scenario. So you have that situation. A lot of people's private property, unfortunately, it's just absolutely gone in the process. And it shows the dangers of government. It shows the dangers of trusting them to actually solve these sorts of problems, even though you even had guys like Trump who were years ago saying, look, man, y'all need to get this thing situated. But everything's got to be so political with these guys, and they care so much about everything else. It's like they're more worried about definitely Newsom. It's more worried about that it's coming from Trump than it is about, man, if we do get a wildfire or whatever, and wildfire, I use that term loosely because we do have these arsonists, these confirmed arsonists going around. And I'm starting to question what all was caused naturally versus what seems to be. And I'm sure that will be a developing story over the next weeks, like what's actually causing this. That's an entirely different conversation. But they're so worried about who the messenger is than they are worried about, preparing yourself, addressing the brush issue, talking about what's going on with you guys' soil. Why is none of that being discussed? Or what were you doing for these last several years, right, to make sure that you're ready to deal with the problem? And now, unfortunately, as with anything, when the government mismanages something, it is you that's going to be left with the ashes.
Well, I mean, to your point, LA cut the fire budget, okay? Clearly, anytime you cut a budget for the fire department, you got to risk something there that is in regard to public safety. But let me tell you where they took it instead. So taxpayer money, instead of paying for their own public safety, they had gay choirs, trans cafes, and social justice art. And that is what they decided to spend their money on instead. So Los Angeles allocated $100,000 to the Civil and Human Rights and Equity Department for a midnight stroll transgender cafe. Yes, that's what they decided was more important than public safety. And so you see all of this, they also had, funds dedicated to a strategic plan, making DEI platforms two of their top three priorities. And so then they list their goals: promoting a safe, healthy, and progressive work environment that effectively manages personal and organization risk, and commit to an organization that embraces diversity, equity, and inclusion. Because that's really what you want, Eric, when you talk about a fire department, right? It's not how can we contain a fire as quickly as possible. It's making sure that it's diverse and inclusive. And so to your point, it's like, well, no, you didn't start the fire. But like when your priority was trans cafes and gay choirs and making sure that your fire department was diverse enough, it is your fault, like it was not your fault, but it is your fault. And it is your fault that you have arsonists that are coming in and being detained, and citizens are like, please, we just saw this guy do this, arrest them. And there's video of it. And police are like, all right, well, we're going to cut him loose. We actually don't really want to charge him. It's like, well, yeah, it is your fault. Now, I do have to ask you, Eric, do you think that this is, because I saw someone speculating on X that this would be the moment that California finally goes, enough. We've had enough. We've had enough of your policies. We've had enough of Gavin Newsom, and says, like, we need a change, and we may not love everything the Republicans do, but like we're literally dying, and our homes are being totally devastated because of these other crazy people.
Well, that's the optimist sort of white pill approach. In that, if you're dealing with sensible people, I think that's the key right there, right? Are we dealing with very sensible people? Because anybody that's rational will look at this. No matter who you supported over the years, you would say, well, we got that wrong. This suave guy with his slick hair has no idea what he's doing. The people that you've entrusted with this public safety, they don't know what they're doing. And it's costing people's lives. It's costing their livelihoods. It's costing people's homes over this. They're worried about the wrong things. And you thought maybe being so progressive was somehow going to pay its benefits or its dividends, and it doesn't. There's no benefit to anything. I talk about this all the time, Sarah. Diversity, all that stuff is stupid because it's a side effect. It's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. And the fact that people champion it as if this is something that is so admirable just because it exists is nonsensical. But you have people pushing it in places that you need more objectivity than anything. When you're talking about like fire departments, when you're talking about people that are first responders, and you're talking about people where it needs to be merit along, are you brave enough? Are you skilled enough to get the job done? All the other stuff doesn't even matter. They're worried about that. And especially when you couple this, and this is what I hope the people of California see. You guys in California have absolutely led the charge when it comes to things such as what's going on with the environment, right? You're against gas and all that. You have all these rules that need to be in place where these people that are manufacturing cars that are in that area, they have to be moving more so over to like electric and all that. You have all these things. They're so worried about the environment. Cali might be number one when it comes to dealing with that. Where did that get you? Because when it did come about a legitimate environmental issue where, I don't know, places burning up, they were nowhere to be found. They were nowhere to be found. They couldn't contain it. They weren't equipped. They were not able to try to at least halt this disaster. It's not to say that you can prevent everything from happening. But I don't know. When I'm seeing guys in suits using handbags to try to put out a fire with putting water in it, that seems like they don't got it all upstairs, right? They don't have it all figured out. The systems in play sucked. So if we are being white-pilled about it, rational people will look at that and say, these guys have failed us. Maybe we should try something new. But on the other hand, Sarah, this is California.
Eric. I wanted to believe, but you're right. I mean, you're right. There are a lot of crazies in California. And I know that the sane ones who watch this program get really mad at me when I'm like, what are you still doing in California? But I admire the dedication to being like, we're going to stay here and we're going to take our state back. If you don't do it now, I would question when, because now would be the time. If you had enough sane people, now would be the time that people really should be reflecting on what they are voting for and allowing in their own state. But I guess we'll see. I don't know. All right. When we come back, let's talk about Joe Biden pushing for a TikTok ban and whether or not that's a good thing. So, Eric, I'd imagine that you have a few words to say about TikTok, the social media platform TikTok. And I think what I'd like to focus on as we go through this topic here, and you say whatever you'd like, but for me, talking about the Biden DOJ saying that we need a TikTok ban is just so laughable, because I would agree. Like, I don't think that a company that is owned by ByteDance, which is a Chinese company that has, many dealings with the CCP, I think that it's a national security risk to have a company like that just coming and infiltrating millions and millions of Americans' phones and having access to all of their sensitive data. But I find it really interesting because after they banned it for the United States government, you still had all of these United States government officials utilizing TikTok in elections, utilizing TikTok for popularity. And it's just kind of like, you guys are just so funny, because now all of a sudden on your way out, you want to say that TikTok is a threat now all of a sudden again, but they have no problem utilizing it whenever it benefits them the most. And I want to get your thoughts on the entire thing, but like, that to me sticks out as just like, you guys don't, since when do you care about national security, Joe? Your son was doing corrupt business dealings with China, the CCP, and Ukraine and all of these. So it's just laughable to me that they want to claim that they care about national security. But what say you?
Yeah, I don't think they care about that. It was something that was very influential for them. Really, every Democrat, they understood that, especially with young voters, the younger demographic, that was a big platform that they were gravitating towards. A lot of, I mean, it's a high usage rate of people that are young, right? So it's not at all surprising that they wanted to utilize it and would even, back it, until they realized that, and then we did have a surge of it going the opposite way as well, where you had a lot of people that were on the quote unquote right that were getting a lot of influence on TikTok. Look, I don't think this isn't some free market that we're dealing with here. This isn't some completely private company, and who owns TikTok? We're talking about a bunch of communists, and I'm not a fan of those guys, as you know. And let's just be completely honest for what it is. Of course, they're going to be using the data, and maybe it is a national security risk for sure. So it is something that is for sure worth looking at. But yeah, when you look at Democrats wanting to get rid of it on their way out. Yeah, everything goes off in my mind. I'm like, what are they up to? Because they were absolutely pro TikTok not too long ago.
Right. Well, and I mean, you talk about just here's how my proof to me, at least, all the evidence you need that TikTok is that this is China's design to make our children dumber and more susceptible to leftist indoctrination, because the TikTok that China has is not actually called TikTok. It's something way different, and they don't allow any of that garbage on their app. Their app is designed to teach these kids, to actual education, to make them stronger. They have all of their stuff locked down, but the app that they unleash on us is the one that is affecting children's mental health, is again, like I said, confusing them, causing them more depression and anxiety and all those things. And so it's like, you cannot convince me that was not by design. Like that was not an accident that they did that for their own country, but did this for ours.
Yeah, no. That is for sure by design, because they know what they're doing. They would prefer a dumber populace. They would prefer a lazier populace. So it is a lot of filth, unfortunately, that's on. That's what the whole Libs of TikTok thing kind of obviously came about because of that. You had a bunch of deranged people, and that's how we discussed TikTok for a while before a lot of conservative and libertarian influencers went over there and tried to use it as a platform. It was just where the crazies hung out, right? And they're spreading that garbage, and it was churning out more garbage. That was what it was. So yeah, it's by design to make sure that this upcoming generation is as stupid as they possibly can, so they can gain any sort of competitive advantage against them. That's not an accident, Sarah, that they would do something like that.
Yeah, I totally agree. All right, my friend, I appreciate you, and stay warm. Hopefully next time I'll see you in studio. Thank you.
Yeah. Appreciate you as always.
Thank you. We'll be right back. All right, I got Steven here. We got like 40 seconds left. We're about to go to the game. We're playing Ohio State. We are the underdogs. If we win, we go to the national championship. What is going to happen?
Wait, hold on. Like, are we going to the national championship? Because I don't know if we can afford that after this one. So,
well,
I'll go pick up some freelance gigs.
Please. But we got to get past tonight first.
I don't know what to feel. I don't know.
I got him in burnt orange, though.
Yes.
That's a feat.
Yeah,
the hat as well.
Yeah, I feel like I'm cheating, but that's okay.
Oh, my gosh. Well, my team made it. Where's yours? Hook 'em horns, guys. See you Monday.